Hello and welcome. This is the Zen community of Oregon, making the teachings of the Buddha Dharma accessible to support your practice. New episodes air every week. Good morning. I'd like to talk this morning about suffering and the alleviation of suffering, which I think is why we're all here. To one degree or another. It seems somehow extra timely, but it is also a perennial topic, isn't it? So in this talk, we can acknowledge that there are many who are suffering in the world right now, or in our lives, or in this room. And that may come with it a sense of helplessness. And there may be lots of feelings or emotions associated with that, but what can we do? And what is the role of spiritual practice? So I would like to share an important story from the Buddha's time about flowers, being that this is a beautiful spring day. There are many flowers. We'll weave flowers into this talk. We'll explore flowers and emotions and wisdom. And I hope to bring in the example of Gandhi as an exemplar of the role of spiritual practice in a world of samsara, in a world of suffering. So that seems like a lot, but I think I can do it. I think I can wrap it all up. So I'd like to start with this story about how we might look at suffering. This story is included in the book, The Hidden Lamp, Stories from 25 Centuries of Awakened Women, but it originates in the Vimalakirti Sutra, 2nd century India. It goes like this. During the time of the Buddha, a great congregation of bodhisattvas, celestial beings, and monks were all gathered at layman Vimalakirti's house, debating the teachings together. A goddess was there too, and one day she was so full of joy that she scattered celestial flowers over the whole congregation. The flowers that landed on the bodhisattvas fell to the floor, but those that landed on the monks stuck to them. The monks tried to shake the flowers from their robes to no avail. The goddess then asked the monk, Shariputra, Reverend Shariputra, why are you trying to brush away these flowers? Shariputra replied, because flowers are not proper for religious people. Then the goddess spoke, why shouldn't flowers be proper for religious people? Flowers do not conceptualize or discriminate. You monks are conceptualizing and discriminating. Even though you have renounced your homes for the sake of the Dharma, if you make discriminations, you are not religious. If you make no discriminations, then you are truly religious. Evil spirits have power over the fearful, but cannot disturb the fearless. So those afraid of forms, sounds, smells, tastes, and textures are under the power of the passions that arise from these things. The flowers stick to those who are afraid of them. They fall from the bodies of those who are free from the discriminations that lead to fear. So this is not about any of the monastics here. Everybody here loves flowers. But it is about all of us who conceptualize and discriminate, don't we? And Shariputra is stuck in some ideas, stuck in some concepts and judgments about flowers. Conceptualizing a flower as a separate thing and then discriminating, judging it bad or appropriate or inappropriate, as if it's fixed, as if it's a singular thing. Incidentally, Shariputra was the Buddha's main disciple, his first Dharma heir, and he is also the same person who Avalokiteshvara is schooling in the Heart Sutra. So he gets it from all the goddesses, the bodhisattvas. He needs a lot of help, don't we all? So here he is conceptualizing, I'm a monk, and from there, limiting that perspective, judging how things should be and should not be, a rather fixed view, and unable to be flexible when a bodhisattva rains flowers on you. That might be an occasion to, roll with it. Have you ever heard someone say, or maybe you've heard yourself say, that's just the way I am? Or that's the way I've always been? Or, but it shouldn't be like this. Or, no good will ever come of this. Or, everything is lost. In these conceptualizing and discriminating thoughts, we encounter grasping and aversion. Just like Shariputra, he's averse to the flowers getting stuck to him, or maybe grasping onto an idea of how it should be. And the goddess points out, this is the recipe for suffering. This is the recipe for fear right here, grasping and aversion. What is the freedom from suffering that the Dharma teachings are pointing to? And of course, we can look at the Four Noble Truths, the truth of suffering, and that's very easily pointed to, isn't it? But it's important that we look at the second, third, and fourth, that we can locate the cause. It is caused by grasping and aversion. It can be cured, it can be alleviated, and it can be alleviated through the Eightfold Path. The Four Noble Truths, sometimes Hogan Roshi calls them the Four Noble Observations. They're not a revealed truth. You can see for yourself, determine for yourself if they're true. I want to share a quote from Maizumi Roshi, my Dharma grandfather, our teacher's teacher, one of them, and without whom our practice here together would not exist. He says, of the Four Noble Truths, the fourth, the Eightfold Path, is the most important, for it talks about how we can take care of suffering. In the Eightfold Path, the Buddha begins with right understanding or right view. This sense of right is not limited to a conventional sense of right and wrong, but means a total or complete understanding. We should understand life and the aspects of life in a proper way. Right understanding is followed by right thought, speech, conduct, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration or samadhi. Samadhi leads us back to right understanding. What is right samadhi? This kind of samadhi or concentration is one of the very crucial bases for making decisions. When we have it, we transcend this restricted I. If we do not transcend this I, we create delusions and we suffer pain, fear, and frustrations. The Eightfold Path begins with right understanding, which takes care of 90% of the pain in life. Okay, did you hear that? The Eightfold Path begins with right understanding, which takes care of 90% of the pain in life. What makes it right? What is right and what is wrong? In one way or another, all of us have some kind of standard by which we make value judgments, by which we judge whether something is good or bad, right or wrong, adequate or inadequate. In this regard, there are 4 aspects to consider when we have decisions to make or actions to take. These aspects are time, place, the people involved, and amount. These could be applied to any situation with our common sense understanding. For instance, we must take into account the people involved in the situation before we can take action or make certain decisions. We also consider the circumstances, the place, and how much we can do. If we pay attention to these 4 aspects, we can judge fairly well what to do. So we come here to practice this right concentration, this zazen, this samadhi, and maybe stop and take stock of the time and place, the people involved in our situation, the amount we can do. Given this, can we, all of us in here or out there, respond to conditions in the same way? It's completely impossible, isn't it? If we consider each of our individual contexts, we all have a completely different calculus. And what are our standards by which we are judging right and wrong and good and bad? And can we take a step back from them and get a larger perspective? One of the tools for this is a chant that we often do here called Affirming Faith in Mind. This is a song of deep wisdom that offers us that opportunity. And it begins, "The great way is not difficult for those who do not pick and choose. When preferences are cast aside, the way stands clear and undisguised. But even slight distinctions made set earth and heaven far apart. If you would clearly see the truth, discard opinions, pro and con." That is very challenging, isn't it? But according to Maizumi Roshi, right understanding takes care of 90% of the pain in life. This is wisdom that we're talking about. This is wisdom that we're exploring how to fold into our life. So see for yourself how wanting things to be different than they are sets us up for 90% of our suffering. Simple example, my mom. I want my mom to be different than she is. Maybe you want your mom to be different than she is too. My mom is 91, and she prefers to carry her laundry up and down the basement stairs to this day. And I would like her to be different. I would like her to stop doing that. But she has autonomy, she has different values, and it means something a lot different to her than it means to me for her to take care of her laundry by herself in that way. So I get to sit with that discomfort of wanting her to be safe when she has a different calculus of values. She's going to do anything. And can I control her? Can I? Can I control anybody? Can I control my own mind? I want the weather to be different sometimes. I want the government to be different. I want my aging process to be different. And then there's the whole category of wanting things that I like to stay the same as they are. They will not. when I understand that, when I accord with that, I would say about 90% of the suffering is alleviated. This is why 12-step groups first affirm powerlessness, the first step. Now, there's a bunch of steps and a bunch of actions after that, but there's a reason why surrender is a spiritual solution. And perhaps it's only when you have tried everything else that this will make sense. Again, from affirming faith in mind. If mind does not discriminate, all things are as they are, as one. To go to this mysterious source frees us from all entanglements. The Four Noble Truths identify the cause of suffering. And the Genjo Koan brings flowers back into it. Flowers fall with our attachment. Weeds spring up with our aversion. This is wisdom. We are offered this perspective, the beginninglessness, the endlessness, the vast spaciousness with which to see, in which to see and experience this relative world. So what about this apparent relative world? What are the flowers or weeds that we're trying to brush away, each of us? There is so much that we might cling to and that we might be deeply distressed by. Is practicing non-conceptualizing and non-discrimination? Is this abandoning the world? Is it really wisdom, or is it a cop-out? Are we just retreating into a monastery or onto a cushion and escaping our duties as citizens and human beings? If I don't suffer, does it mean that I don't care? Does it mean that I condone the painful things that are happening in the world? Will I lose my energy to do anything about it? Or what if I can't seem to stop suffering? What if I'm experiencing rage, despair, sadness, helplessness, maybe cynicism, or even nihilism? What about all these emotions anyway? Are they incompatible with Zen? Is Zen just an emotional suppression program? What if we could see emotions as phenomena that are in many ways a lot like flowers? We can try to avoid them, or we can cling to them. We can cultivate them. They can proliferate depending on our circumstances, depending on our history, our biology, our karma. So let's focus on flowers for just a moment. They're a little easier to think about maybe than emotions. It's easy to say that they're natural in that they follow the laws of nature, right? When we look deeply into a flower, is there anything it's not connected to? The soil, the boundlessness of the earth, the air that breezes in from the ocean, the rain. It's all here. And our experience, our direct experience. They're an expression of life that emerge from the same source as everything else. Flowers exist in their form. They express and continue life through space and time. They are a response to the invitation to life. A yes to the invitation to participate in life, They are adapted for survival. They are, for the most part, pleasing to insects, bees, wasps, flies, birds, certainly deer, bats, people. And they support all of these lives. Flowering foods support so much life. What are some foods maybe out there in the Great Vow Garden or grounds that you know that are flowering right now that will become food? What's out there, folks? Apples, pears, plums, kale, strawberries, blueberries, raspberries. There's all of it out there. From our perspective, these are just wonderful and so pleasing, right? But what about the corpse flower? Now, we don't have one of those, but you can cultivate them. They're from Sumatra. They stand 6 to 8 feet tall. They bloom once every 7 years, and they smell like dead bodies rotting. Has anybody here ever seen one in real life? A couple people have. Was it worth it? No. Yes. Liking and disliking. Well, flies think it's great. And it too is a flower, responding to life, expressing this life. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it right? Is it wrong? Should it be? Should it not be? What about dandelions? What if our relationship to emotions was like this? No judgment, just a list of natural phenomena. Maybe cultivate some, maybe relocate others. No big deal. Maybe some are inherently proliferative. We can just learn that about them and respond accordingly. They are inherently transient, are they not? What is their nature? What is their function? Certainly as humans, they have helped us to survive. And they've been useful that way, continue to be in many ways. Can we view emotions just in this, say, with the same curiosity? What about anger? What about that particular emotion? We have a precept about that emotion, not to unleash anger, but to seek its source. Could this be seen as another natural phenomenon that arises with the right causes and conditions? Sometimes I see it in the same way as fire. And the firefighters that I've come to know and appreciate, they are students of fire. You have to understand it well to extinguish it. You have to understand it well to utilize it. They do prescription burns. We've had decades and decades of fire suppression in our forests that contribute to these massive conflagrations, that and the current climate issues. I found some quotes from Lama Rod Owens, who's a Dharma teacher who wrote a book called Love and Rage. And he says, I believe anger is like a controlled fire. We do controlled fires in forests to create room and space for new growth and to fertilize the soil. But that fire can get out of control if there aren't any skilled people there controlling that fire. For us, if we have no wisdom, then our anger gets out of control and it starts burning up everything. I see so many people burning up everything. Sometimes it's okay to think that our anger is trying to protect us. However, it's more truthful to think that it's actually protecting something else that's a little deeper than that. It's protecting our hurt. It's protecting our broken hearts. The work to turn our attention back to the woundedness is this really intense, profound path of transformation, which doesn't feel as good as just responding to the anger, because the energy of anger makes us feel powerful. Maybe you stepped onto this path of transformation And that's a brave thing to do. And it's something that takes real time. It takes time to see into the whole truth of these phenomena, any phenomena. But for us to see and transform these kinds of things, we need to practice. We need retreat practice. We need meditation. We need to create the conditions for transformation. This is very similar to psychotherapy in some ways, where we shine the light of awareness for transformation. We hold something together in awareness. And from that larger perspective, we can shift our view and our relationship to our experience, to our world. We had wildland firefighters come here for a retreat in January, and one of them reported that just having the practice and the time to be quiet and to engage in contemplative practice, she was able to walk out into the forest and just appreciate the arising of nature in a way that she said she hadn't done in literally years, that she'd been outside either to engage in physical training, which they have to do a lot of. She goes outside, they run and exercise a lot. She had only been out to do physical training or fight fires. And to just have the gift of half a day to be with nature, this was transformative for this person. So when we see clearly what's happening within us, we can see how it best functions, how it serves our emotions, flowers, whatever it is. I mean, look at these altars. They're arresting. The ikebana that get created here are just such a beautiful expression. Thank you, Soshin. And with that, we have the clarity to begin to ask, what is the time? What is the place? What are the people? What is the amount I can do about this? And is anger perhaps the best fuel right now? The Buddha teaches in the Dhammapada, hatred does not cease through hatred at any time. Hatred ceases through love. This is an unalterable law. Hatred does not cease through hatred at any time. Hatred ceases through love. This is an unalterable law. You can see for yourself if that's true. So, one person who followed this law was Gandhi. And it's important to see his whole story, which I won't be able to share all of, but before he engaged in activism in India, he was sent to South Africa. He was an attorney, young attorney, 23 years old, was just there to help some Indian merchants in South Africa. And he identified more as British at that time than Indian. And in the process of traveling through South Africa, he was thrown off of a train for sitting in first class. And he was beaten for trying again to sit in first class. And those experiences were life-changing for him. And he began developing skills of nonviolent resistance for the Indian population in South Africa, and as well began to expand that among the Black Africans before he returned to India. And he was well known by then, and the hope was that he would return to liberate India from the British. And he returned to India, and everybody was ready for him to lead the people. And instead what he did was he went on pilgrimage. He got on a train and rode third class through India for 7 months and just went and stayed with the people, stayed in doorways or outside or in really difficult conditions. And he did this for 7 months. And after he did all this, by the end of it, he had mostly feelings of rage and despair at the state of the country. He witnessed people in such desperation and such poverty and disease, and most couldn't even read or write. there was enormous wealth disparity. And he was most upset, not just with how the British were treating the people of India, but how it seemed to him that his own people had given up, that the plight of this colonized people bred helplessness, a lack of pride in place, a lack of care in their temples, in their public spaces. The result of colonialism and the lack of agency was breeding this lack of self-respect, and he was just at a loss, so full of grief and rage. And he knew he could not be clear in his discernment while he was clouded by anger in this way. So he established an ashram, and he went into retreat, and he engaged in meditative activity, sitting meditation, but also spinning thread for weaving cloth. And any of you who are knitters or crocheters, you understand how meditative a process like that is. They kept a monastic schedule, a structure, community coming together to chant, to meditate, to eat, to support each other's spiritual practice. He knew he needed to get to the root of the feelings of resentment and anger and ill will before he could be of benefit in the way that he knew he needed to be, before he could lead with love. And this became a pattern for his whole life, the rest of his life. India declared independence to take effect in 1 year. And that 1 year came and went. And at the end of that year, the next move was for Gandhi to make, to lead the people into action once independence was declared. And to the great frustration of the independence movement, of the people, instead of leading the people, he went on retreat. He didn't know what to do. So he went on retreat. A little bit about that. One of his advisors says, "What will it be?" he asked Gandhi. "What actions shall we take?" He was dismayed to find that Gandhi still did not know. This was weeks and weeks he was in retreat. Gandhi patiently remained in his retreat, praying and meditating while the entire country was boiling over. They were rioting in the streets. What precisely was Gandhi doing? He was, as he himself said, quote, listening intently for the inner voice. Throughout his career as an organizer and leader in the Indian independence movement, as before in South Africa, Gandhi would often keep the anxious masses waiting as he listened for guidance. He would simply wait with exquisite patience until the still, small voice spoke. Gandhi himself had written, quote, "The only tyrant I accept in this world is the still, small voice within. To that voice, above all others, I am compelled to listen." This is the voice of wisdom, not our ordinary thinking mind. So in January of 1929, Gandhi and his community sat and prayed and meditated and spun and worked in the gardens and chanted and lived their disciplined spiritual lives. Gandhi himself pondering and praying about India's dilemma day and night. India waited with bated breath. Gandhi tells us later in his autobiography, quote, "I could tell the people nothing about the act of civil disobedience we should follow, as I myself knew nothing about it." Finally, the answer came to him as in a dream. Up from the depths of his mind came the solution. Gandhi himself describes it, quote, "But like a flash it came. And as you know, it was enough to shake the country from one end to the other." Gandhi tells us later that he was as surprised as anyone by this epiphany. What would the proper act of civil disobedience be? What did the still small voice say to Gandhi? Just this: the country would rise up in resistance to the oppressive British salt laws, the laws that gave a monopoly on the sale of salt to the British imperial government. Under these oppressive laws, India's own salt could be mined exclusively by the British and then sold back to its rightful owners Indian citizens. Gandhi's epiphany was this: the first pan-Indian act of civil disobedience would be a great march to the sea to make salt in direct and explicit contravention of the law. Gandhi learned that the still small voice of awake mind was highly creative, innovative, and wildly unpredictable. Gandhi himself often had no idea what creative solutions would emerge from his inner guidance, or when they would emerge. It is positively thrilling to read his life story and to observe from afar the wildly creative way the awake mind works. One of his disciples says, Gandhi was the most bewildering opponent any nation ever faced. Every move he made was spontaneous. Every year that passed found him more youthful, more radical, more experimental. British administrators were baffled and exasperated by this little man who withdrew when they would have attacked when they would have withdrawn, and seemed to be getting stronger by the day. Gandhi's actions were always fresh, surprising, befuddling, and almost always frustrating to his British peers. The British secret police, trying to fathom the way Gandhi functioned, wrote about him in a secret memo. The workings of his conscience, his ethical and intellectual attitude, baffles the ordinary processes of thought. No one knew what Gandhi was going to do next. This is from The Dharma in Difficult Times by Stephen Cope. Really lovely. So, this compatibility, this natural synergy of contemplative life and action in the world, these are not two. In emptiness, these are not two, yet in each are contained all forms. Once coarse and fine are seen no more, then how can there be taking sides? Whether seasons of a retreat, a week, a season, 3 years, a lifetime, what happens here and in your practice is also true. Perhaps truer than whatever it is that's on your phone. The importance of the ashram, the importance of the spiritual community. Gandhi is the hero of the story, of course. But who maintained the ashram? Who cooked the rice? Who swept the walkways? Are they not just as much a part of the story? Could it have happened without them? No, it could not have. It could not have. So what are you cultivating, even in the midst of this suffering world? Can we take care of what is ours to take care of? Can there be a contentment, a willingness, a participation with life that is deeper than the conditions that surround us? Or as Chosen Roshi says, can we at least have a suffering -1? If we can relieve our own suffering to some degree, that subtracts the amount of suffering for everyone, for all of us, by 1. I'd like to close with a poem, one of my favorite poets ever, Marge Piercy. This poem is called If They Come in the Night. If They Come in the Night. Long ago, on a night of danger and vigil, a friend said, "Why are you happy?" He explained, we lay together on a cold, hard floor. He explained what prison meant, because he had done time. And I talked of the death of friends. "Why are you happy then?" he asked, close to angry. I said, "I like my life. If I had to give it back, if they take it from me, let me not feel I wasted any. Let me not feel I forgot to love anyone I meant to love. That I forgot to give what I held in my hands. That I forgot to do some little piece of the work that wanted to come through. sun and moonshine, starshine, the muted light off the waters of the bay at night, the white light of the fog stealing in, the first spears of morning touching a face I love. We all lose everything. We lose ourselves. We are lost. Only what we manage to do lasts. What love sculpts from us. But what I count, my rubies, my children, are those moments, wide open, when I know clearly who I am, who you are, what we do. A marigold, an oak leaf, a meteor, with all my senses hungry and filled at once, like a pitcher with light. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Zen Community of Oregon podcast, and thank you for your practice. New episodes air every week. Please consider making a donation at zendust.org. Your support supports us.